Good afternoon and welcome to our daily press briefing online and live on EBS. Today is Monday, 22nd of March. We have quite a few announcements for you today. First of all, I have an update to the President's agenda. On Wednesday afternoon, President von der Leyen will meet with Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State. They will deliver short press statements ahead of their meeting in the VIP corner. High Representative Vice President Josep Borrell will also meet Secretary of State Blinken on the same day, and they will also deliver press statements afterwards. And now over to Marta, who has an announcement on how SURE has helped people keep their jobs during the pandemic.
Bonjour, j'espère que vous me voyez bien, vous m'entendez bien. Donc, la Commission a adopté aujourd'hui le premier rapport semestriel sur SURE, qui présente l'impact de cet instrument doté de 100 milliards d'euros et destiné à protéger les emplois et les revenus touchés par la crise du Covid-19. Le rapport conclut que l'instrument SURE a permis d'endiguer la hausse du chômage dans les États membres qui ont bénéficié de cet instrument. Alors, les chiffres parlent d'eux-mêmes, vous les voyez derrière Eric. SURE a soutenu entre 25 et 30 millions de personnes en 2020. Cela représente environ un quart du nombre total des travailleurs salariés dans les 18 États membres bénéficiaires de SURE. Le rapport estime également qu'entre 1,5 million et 2,5 millions d'entreprises touchées par la pandémie du Covid-19 ont bénéficié de SURE, leur permettant ainsi de garder les travailleurs. Et vous trouverez bien sûr plus d'informations dans le rapport lui-même ainsi que dans notre communiqué de presse que nous avons publié aujourd'hui. Merci.
Merci Martha. Visiblement, nous avons eu un petit problème technique avec la diffusion des chiffres derrière moi, donc nous vous les ferons parvenir séparément. Bien entendu, toute l'information est de toute manière dans notre communiqué de presse. Et maintenant, je passe la parole à Adalbert, qui a des informations importantes sur la première réunion d'un nouveau groupe de contact. Adalbert.
Thank you, Eric. This morning, Commissioner for Home Affairs Ylva Johansson opened the work of the new European Contact Group on Search and Rescue. The Contact Group is a key action of the new Pact on Migration and Asylum to address the complex issue of search and rescue at sea carried out by private vessels. For the first time, it provides a structured framework for cooperation, information exchange, and sharing of good practices between different actors with legal and operational responsibilities in this field. Today's first meeting is bringing together national Coast Guard authorities in member states and Schengen-associated countries. More information in our daily news.
Merci Adalbert. Puis je voudrais attirer votre attention sur deux réunions qui se tiennent de l'autre côté de la rue aujourd'hui. D'abord, le haut représentant vice-président Josep Borrell préside aujourd'hui le Conseil Affaires étrangères avec un ordre du jour très large. Parmi les questions abordées figureront entre autres la situation en Russie, au Venezuela, dans les Balkans occidentaux, en Géorgie et au Myanmar. Les ministres auront également un débat stratégique sur le voisinage méridional et la Turquie. Le commissaire Olivier Várhelyi représentera la Commission lors des différentes sessions de ce Conseil. Une conférence de presse avec le haut représentant Borrell est prévue vers 16 heures. Puis les ministres chargés du marché intérieur et de l'industrie se réunissent aujourd'hui par vidéoconférence dans le cadre du Conseil Compétitivité pour discuter de l'autonomie stratégique de l'Union européenne afin d'atteindre l'objectif d'une industrie plus verte, numérique et résiliente. La vice-présidente exécutive Margrethe Vestager et le commissaire Thierry Breton participent à la réunion pour le compte de la Commission. La vice-présidente exécutive participera également à la conférence de presse vers 13h15. Et comme d'habitude, nous vous prions de réserver vos questions liées à ces sujets aux conférences de presse respectives plus tard dans la journée. Ensuite, nous marquons aujourd'hui un anniversaire triste et personnel pour beaucoup d'entre nous, le 5e anniversaire des attaques terroristes à Bruxelles le 22 mars 2016. 5 ans après, la douleur est toujours et encore très vive. Aujourd'hui, Bruxelles, notre ville, commémore ceux que nous avons perdus dans ces terribles attentats. Nos pensées accompagnent les victimes et leurs proches. Jamais nous n'oublierons. And let me finish my announcements with a few words about the sad news of the sudden passing away of Stephen Brown that reached us last Friday. On behalf of the SPP, I would like to express my heartfelt condolences to his family and loved ones, but also to all his friends and colleagues. Deeply committed, tireless and boundlessly enthusiastic in his work, Stephen lived his life across borders. Born in London, he grew up not only in the UK, but also in Austria and in Australia. He lived in at least 8 countries over the course of his life and spoke more than 7 languages. He had a wide-ranging career with Reuters, both in Europe and Latin America, before joining Politico in 2015, where he became editor-in-chief of Politico Europe these past years. I did not have the opportunity of meeting him personally, but many of you knew him very well. And from all the reactions I have seen since Friday, I know that he will be dearly missed. Let me give the floor to David, who I believe also wants to say a few words. David.
Thank you, Eric. On behalf of Politico, I just want to thank you and Dana and the SPP and the Commission, and indeed we want to thank the entire broader Brussels community, especially our friends and colleagues in the press corps, for the incredible outpouring of support and emotion in recent days. It really has been hugely appreciated and a source of great strength at a difficult time. Stephen, as you mentioned, was a terrific editor who cared deeply about Europe, about Politico as a pan-European news organization. And of course, we share this deep grief with Stephen's family, especially his wife Laura and their children, but also with Stephen's Reuters family as well. We'll continue to share your messages with Stephen's family, and we'll have more information in the days ahead about ways to honor his memory. Thank you again, Eric.
Thank you, David, for these words. And with that, we're at the end of our announcements, and we will start with your questions. And I give the floor to Ketevan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ketevan, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I have a question about Georgia and political crisis. In Georgia, as President Michel special envoy left Tbilisi and there is no agreement yet between political parties, we want to know more about it. Can you give us more clarity when Danielson is going to inform High Rep and President Michel, and what is the next? So position of EU in this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question, Ketevan. But as I said during my announcements, Georgia is actually one of the issues which is on the agenda of the Foreign Affairs Council taking place today, and which will be followed by a press conference. So I would please ask you to raise these questions during that press conference later today. And with that, I move to Catalin.
Yes, Eric, thank you very much. This is a question about competition. Vice President Vestager will meet tomorrow Hungarian Foreign Minister. And my question is, could you tell us what kind of issues will be discussed during this meeting, and more specifically, whether the 2 complaints submitted to the European Commission in 2016 and 2019 about the allegedly illegal state aid to pro-government media and the public media will be on the agenda? Thank you.
Thank you. Ariana is replaced today, I believe, by Daniel, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, hello, Eric. I think you can hear me and see me. Thank you, Kathleen, for your question. Indeed, as I'm stepping in for Ariana today, I have a number of files to check. So allow me to check the exact details of this. And of course, we can provide a readout after the meeting. But let me check this up for you and I'll get back to you this afternoon.
Thank you. We continue and we move on to Adam.
This is one about vaccines. And I wonder if I might just put a couple of things to you, Eric. One is about what would be the circumstances whereby the European Commission would want to instigate a ban on vaccines going to the United Kingdom. You've seen the comments from Mr. Johnson and also the discontent among some members about the rhetoric being raised. And secondly, Eric, I wonder if you could explain why it is that at this time European Union countries have a stockpile of many millions of doses of vaccine, but are consistently talking about not having enough.
Thank you very much, Adam. On your first question, the President has given our view of what the situation is and what are the objectives that we are following. This is not about banning vaccine exports. This is about making sure that companies deliver on their commitments to the member states and the European Union that are inscribed in contracts that they have with us. And therefore, this is our objective, to make sure that the contracts that we have signed are respected. And in that context, the President has said that, of course, we see that actually companies that manufacture doses in the EU have been exporting very widely, which is in itself a good thing, but that we want to see reciprocity and proportionality in these exports. And this is our position. Therefore, it's not about setting conditions for this or that. It is about making sure that we are in a position to receive the vaccines that are foreseen for Europe. And I have no comments to make on the number of vaccines that have been delivered or not and that are stocked. Quite frankly, this is about making sure that member states have the vaccines they need to ensure the rollout of their vaccination strategies. And quite clearly, as we have seen and said, we are expecting an increase in the delivery of vaccines over the coming months in order to be able to speed up the vaccination effort. James.
Hello, Eric. Good morning. Thank you for the question. Two quick questions. You know, this demand for reciprocity, I mean, what specifically would demonstrate reciprocity? Not easy to say. Are we talking about just a few million doses being shipped over to the EU, or a more sort of long-term arrangement? Or what would you see as being an accord that could be worked out between Britain, AstraZeneca, and the EU, perhaps with, I don't know, sharing the Harleys factory in the Netherlands? So really just to, you know, we've had a lot of rhetoric. How about some actual sort of concrete demands, please? And secondly, you know, the threat to trigger or to mention even Article 122 has been read as a threat, and it came across as a threat. I mean, why would anyone in Britain and the British government give in to threats from your institution? Thank you.
Thank you, James. I believe the word is reciprocity, actually, and the President has clearly said that first of all, she wants to discuss this with European leaders, as you know, but secondly, it's about making sure that if we are exporting doses of vaccines to countries that are also producing vaccines, and by the way, in certain cases, from companies with whom we have contracts or with which we have contracts, that we also receive vaccines or products that are necessary for the production of vaccines, so inputs, as well. So it's a give and take, if you wish. We will be exporting, and the companies that are situated in those countries to which we export would also be exporting to Europe. You'll have to wait for more specifics on this, but clearly this is the direction that we are going on. As to Article 122, the only thing that the President said is that nothing is off the table, answering a question during her press conference here. It is entirely legitimate for the European Union to be looking at the different tools that it has at its disposal or could have at its disposal in order to ensure that, again, contracts it has signed with vaccine manufacturers for Europe are respected. And as I believe I've already mentioned, obviously we are in discussions with companies, and that is definitely the first route to make sure that the companies and us are in agreement as to the speed with which the companies are supposed to deliver the vaccines. Secondly, we have the export authorization mechanism in place. We've had it since the 1st of February. That is a tool that we are looking at. And then there are other options. Somebody had mentioned whether Article 122 could be on the table. Article 122 is a tool that is in the treaty, and therefore it's entirely legitimate that we would look as to whether such a tool might form part of the solution to the issues that we are trying to solve. You have a follow-up, James?
Yes, sorry, and thank you for the follow-up. I mean, Downing Street says that Ursula von der Leyen gave Boris Johnson assurances there would not be an export ban against Britain in January. I mean, are they lying, or did Ursula von der Leyen give those reassurances? And secondly, you know, Britain does have a contract as well with AstraZeneca, and well, some people would argue it's a better contract. Interested in your arguments on that.
No, you're not going to get my arguments on that. I'm not here to compare contracts. Frankly, that's really not something for here. And secondly, I'm certainly not going to comment on the conversations or the comments that are made on conversations between the President of the Commission and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Joe.
Let me plug that in. Thank you, Eric. On the same topic, which party has the final say on the export transparency mechanism? So if a member state wants to send a shipment, say, to the UK, but the Commission doesn't believe that shipment should be sent to the UK, which party has the final say in that, please?
Thank you. It's spelled out black on white in our fact sheet, but I will ask Miriam to explain to you the mechanism again.
Thank you. So the mechanism basically says that the member states that receive the export authorization request from the vaccine manufacturer, they have to notify the European Commission within 2 working days. And then they have to explain what is their draft decision, what is their position as to this export request. The Commission then has 1 working day to reply. If the Commission disagrees with the position of the member state, then there has to be an adoption by the College of Commissioners. Otherwise, if we agree, we go ahead, and then the member states in charge notifies the company of the final decision.
Joe, you have a follow-up.
Just wondering, are we going to start getting a more frequent and regular update on these export requests, please? Because we seem now that it's kind of become a much bigger issue, where that was the Italian shipment was the only one that was previously blocked, but it looks like we're going to get a lot more. So are we going to see a daily update in these decisions, please?
Thank you for your suggestion. We will report as appropriate. And let me remind you that we do not communicate on the requests. We communicate on a weekly basis, normally on the decisions that have been taken. Marco.
Thank you very much for the floor, Eric. Since the mechanism for the control of export is in place, the EU has authorized 40 million doses of vaccines. Can you tell us how many of them are from AstraZeneca?
Miriam.
Yes, so again, we do not provide individual details of the transactions of the companies for confidentiality reasons, so we can only give an overview. What we can confirm is that all companies have introduced requests because they also include requests for clinical trials, for testing and small samples. So in that context, of course, AstraZeneca has also introduced requests, but we cannot provide the numbers.
Marco, you have a follow-up.
I'm sorry, I have some issue with the connection, so I will need to re-listen the answer. But I have another related question. Do you have any evidence of AstraZeneca exporting doses to the UK from the plant in Netherlands before that the EU regulation on export ban was in place? I mean, in January and February, basically. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we cannot comment on individual transactions, so I cannot give you further comments than what I said already.
Griselda, on the same issue?
Non, c'est sur le Covid, mais ce n'est pas sur le vaccin AstraZeneca. Je peux patienter si tu veux.
Non, mais on va prendre les questions sur le Covid en général, y compris sur les questions.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Ma question, c'est à propos d'un débat qui est ouvert en Espagne face à la Pâques et aux vacances, puisque la mobilité interne entre régions est interdite, mais il y a l'option de pouvoir arriver en Espagne d'autres pays de l'Union. Et il y a beaucoup de citoyens qui ne comprennent pas ça. La liberté de circulation, le droit européen, c'est juste le droit de traverser les frontières entre États ou c'est aussi un droit interne dans ces États? Est-ce que vous pouvez dire si vous avez une position sur ça? Merci.
Merci Griselda. Effectivement, là on est sur un sujet qui est un peu différent encore, qui est la liberté de circulation. Je prends note de ta question et on reviendra une fois qu'on aura terminé les questions plus spécifiquement liées à la stratégie des vaccins. Mais j'ai bien pris note de ta question et Christiane pourra y répondre. So let's continue with questions on the vaccine strategy, deliveries of vaccines, etc. Angela.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for the floor. I've read on international media that by May, the United States will have a surplus of 600 million doses. And I guess nobody knows at the moment where they're going to export these doses. I was wondering whether this would be a topic of discussion in the talk between von der Leyen and Blinken next Wednesday, or else if you had already any reassurance from Washington that a part of these doses or all of them will come to Europe. Thanks.
Thank you, Angela. I mean, let's be very clear. The European Union has built its vaccine delivery strategy on a certain number of contracts for the production of vaccines by companies that operate primarily in Europe, even though we know that the supply chains are very often international. Because these value chains are international, as you know, we are in discussions with the Americans as to how to ensure that these supply chains can remain open and therefore facilitate the production of vaccines. This is the focus of our discussions with the Americans. As to the visit by Secretary of State Blinken, I'm sure that there will be a wide-ranging discussion between the President and the Secretary of State, and we will provide you with a readout afterwards. Tommaso.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the floor. Tommaso Galavotti in Cross, Italy. It's still it's again a question on the export mechanism, export monitoring mechanism, because I've read on the Italian press that the Italian government is going to push the Commission, possibly along with Germany and France, and they are going to ask a sort of automaticity of the export ban of vaccines for companies which do not respect the contracts with the EU. Would you be willing to consider such a request? Thank you.
Thank you, Tommaso. Look, we're not going to speculate on the tools or the actual details of what it is that we could suggest in order to achieve the objectives. What is clear, what the President has said, is that our issue indeed is with the underperformance, under-delivery of vaccines compared to what is in our contracts with these companies. And that is the issue that we want to solve. How to make sure that companies deliver to the EU as per contract. And in that context, we are looking at different options. So we'll have to wait and see what are the final decisions that are taken as to the best possible tool or tools in order to achieve that. David.
Thanks very much, Eric. So just on this same point, of course, we understand from what the President herself has said that only AstraZeneca is not meeting its contractual obligations. And so the question that begs, of course, is beyond all the rhetoric, what would actually potentially result in an increased number of doses for the EU anytime soon? And on that front, we wonder about this Helix factory in the Netherlands, which apparently has not been authorized by the EMA. If you have any clarity on why that hasn't happened still now for the Helix factory in the Netherlands, an EU country, to be authorized to produce vaccine for the EU, and if you expect that vaccine doses manufactured there might be redirected to the EU. And then if we could just have a clarification, since we were going over the details of how the export mechanism works, if in fact there's anything in the existing mechanism, any legal authority by which the EU can seize control of vaccine doses that have been blocked from export. So in other words, you can stop the exports, but as I understand, there doesn't seem to be anything that would allow the EU to then force the company to sell that to the EU or to anyone in particular. They could give it away to a country that's authorized to receive, that isn't subject to the export restriction, I believe. And finally, do we know what's happened to the doses that were stopped from going to Australia? Have those been shipped anywhere else? I understand some of that may be fungible. Thank you.
I'll answer those questions. You understand well on the scope of the export mechanism. This is not about seizing the doses. It is about stopping an export to a country which is not on the list of exemptions. That is how the mechanism works. And in that respect, therefore, it's not up to us to tell you what has happened to the doses, the 250,000 doses, if I remember well, that were meant to be shipped and were not shipped ultimately. This is a question that you have to ask to the company. On your first question, what is clear is that once again our objective is to make sure that doses are delivered to the European Union by those manufacturers with which we have contracts. Now, you will remember that our contracts foresee the notion of manufacturing at risk, and therefore it's not about waiting for this or that authorization before you start producing. The manufacturers are supposed to produce and stockpile so that they can deliver to the European Union as per contract. As to the reasons why the plant has not yet been authorized by EMA, I would ask you to contact AstraZeneca and check with them what are the steps. My understanding is that the process is ongoing, and we are therefore extremely hopeful that the authorization will be given soon, and that after that, deliveries to the European Union can start based on precisely the fact that production will have taken place before. David, you have a follow-up.
Just quickly then, if we could clarify, Eric, on the ultimate goal, is it for reciprocity, in which case the UK, for example, exporting doses maybe to other third countries as the EU has would be a show of reciprocity, but it would not in fact deliver any additional doses, result in any additional doses for the EU? Or is the goal to have the fulfillment of the AstraZeneca contract, and again, I think you're confirming that that's the only contract in which there seems to be a breach of some kind. Is there the goal actually to get that contract fulfilled and get doses to the EU as soon as possible? Because we agree reciprocity doesn't necessarily accomplish that point, correct?
David, look, we're not going to start going into the minute and refined analysis of these concepts. Reciprocity is a simple word. It means if I export something to another country that is in fact producing vaccines, this is what the president has said, we expect that that country will also be exporting vaccines or other materials which are necessary for the production of vaccines to the European Union. She had specified that concept and the concept of proportionality. And I'm afraid that we will all have to wait a little bit in order to see what are the exact proposals that the Commission makes on these issues. Nick.
Hi there, thanks, Eric. Just two quick ones. First of all, you've probably seen there were some polling numbers out today on the AstraZeneca vaccine, showing that 55% of Germans, 61% of French people, and almost half of Italians and Spanish people think it's not safe. Are you worried about that, and have you got any sort of plan for how you can improve the confidence in this vaccine? And secondly, has the UK offered to sort of share the production facilities at the Helix plant with you? And would that be enough for reciprocity? Or is it still your position that vaccines have actually got to come from the UK factories as well? Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. On your first question, I will pass the floor to Stéphane. On the second question, we are not going to go into any details of what solutions can be. What our position is that we expect AstraZeneca to deliver the doses to the European Union that have been contracted. Contacts are ongoing with the company. You know that we even sent them a letter of formal notice, in order to start a formal dispute settlement mechanism. That is a strong basis to have detailed discussions on how to resolve the contractual issues that we believe we face. On the first question, I give the floor to Stéphane.
Thank you very much. The trust of the citizens in our vaccines has, from the beginning of our work, always been crucial. Citizens are being injected with active substances, so it's important that they have the trust and the confidence that these substances are safe and effective. And this is one of the reasons why we've always said that it's important that the vaccines which are part of our portfolio are being assessed thoroughly by the scientists of the European Medicines Agency. They check in detail, in depth, the safety and the effectiveness of the vaccine. They do that in the context of each market authorization request, and recently they have done it following the questions that were regarding the use of AstraZeneca. In this context, the EMA has again confirmed the safety and the effectiveness of the vaccine. So it's extremely important that we continue to follow a scientific approach, hence the very important role of the European Medicines Agency. Thank you.
Thank you. We continue on this issue. David.
Merci Eric. David Carretta, Radio Radicale. En fait, j'aurais deux sujets, deux questions. Encore sur cet établissement Alix aux Pays-Bas. Je voulais savoir si vous avez eu des rassurances, des garanties par la société que la production est bien là, donc a été stocké, produit. Les vaccins ont été produits et stockés en vue des livraisons après éventuelle autorisation de l'EMA pour cet établissement. Et je voulais savoir si il y a eu des vaccins AstraZeneca qui ont été exportés à partir du 1er février vers le Royaume-Uni ou pas. Deuxième question, hier, le commissaire Breton a annoncé que le 14 juillet, l'Union européenne pourrait être immunisée. J'imagine l'objectif 70% population adulte. Si c'est le cas, pourquoi pas avancer votre objectif pour justement la vaccination? Merci.
Merci beaucoup. En ce qui concerne la première question, écoute, comme tu sais, évidemment, nous suivons de près les questions de production des vaccins. C'est quelque chose que, en particulier, le commissaire Breton suit très attentivement. Tu te souviendras qu'il a même visité, en fait, l'usine à laquelle tu fais référence. Notre problème, ça n'est pas d'obtenir des garanties d'une usine qui fabrique des vaccins, c'est d'obtenir d'AstraZeneca, car c'est avec AstraZeneca que nous avons le contrat, les doses qui sont prévues. Et c'est sur ce point que nous sommes en discussion avec l'entreprise. Il y a, comme tu le sais, dans le contrat avec AstraZeneca, plusieurs usines qui sont mentionnées, dont celle à laquelle tu as fait référence. Et nous nous attendons à ce que les différentes usines d'AstraZeneca mentionnées ou qui travaillent pour AstraZeneca et qui sont mentionnées dans ce contrat produisent des doses en vue de remplir les obligations contractuelles de cette entreprise par rapport à l'Union européenne. En ce qui concerne les exportations de doses d'AstraZeneca, Myriam.
Comme je dis tout à l'heure, il y a eu des exportations d'AstraZeneca pour des essais cliniques, des échantillons, des petites quantités, mais on ne peut pas donner les détails de ces transactions individuelles pour des questions de confidentialité.
Merci. Quant à la date du 14 juillet, qui évidemment me serait chère, mais j'imagine que d'autres préféraient peut-être le 21 juillet, ou encore une autre date. Je crois que ce qu'il est important de dire, c'est que notre objectif, c'est clairement qu'à la fin de l'été, 70% des adultes de l'Union européenne aient été vaccinés. Ça ne veut pas dire que nous souhaitons attendre jusqu'à la fin de l'été. Plus nous serons en mesure d'accélérer les livraisons de doses de vaccins à l'Union européenne, et plus les campagnes de vaccination pourront accélérer le rythme, plus tôt nous serons en mesure d'atteindre nos objectifs, et je crois que tout le monde s'en réjouira. Mais je crois que nous avons tous appris depuis le début de cette campagne que les incertitudes et les inconnues sont trop nombreuses pour que l'on passe son temps à changer l'objectif. Notre objectif reste celui-là et nous ferons tout, non seulement pour l'atteindre, mais bien entendu, si possible, pour l'atteindre avant son terme. David, tu as une question de follow-up?
Oui, donc il faudra attendre la fin du mois de septembre pour la prise du Berlaymont après la prise de la Bastille. Non, blague à part. Ma question, c'est toujours sur le contrat AstraZeneca, etc. Parce que si je me rappelle bien le contrat, il y a des clauses qui prévoient aussi un best effort de votre part, enfin de la part des États membres, etc. S'il y a un problème dans une usine en particulier, mettre à disposition de la société d'autres usines, etc. C'est pour ça que je demande si vous faites des vérifications par rapport aux 4 usines ou les 2 qui sont sur le territoire de l'Union européenne en ce moment pour la production et pas seulement sur fill and finish, c'est parce qu'il y a plusieurs clauses qui disent si AstraZeneca n'est pas en mesure, il y a un best effort qui doit être fait de côté européen. Et donc voilà, c'est pour ça que la question, je crois, est assez importante de savoir si AstraZeneca, dans l'usine d'Alix, a fait ce qu'elle devait faire.
Merci. Je ne vais pas revenir sur la production d'une usine en particulier. En revanche, Sonia peut t'expliquer quelles sont les actions que mène notamment le commissaire Breton, justement pour s'assurer que nous aidions au maximum les industriels européens à trouver des solutions aux enjeux auxquels ils font face pour produire plus rapidement et en plus grande quantité. Sonia.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour David, merci beaucoup pour ta question. Sur la visite du commissaire à la fabrique Alix, ce que je pourrais te dire que le commissaire a bien visité l'usine le 3 mars et il a constaté en fait que la production va très bien, que c'est une production stable et que le personnel fait beaucoup d'efforts pour augmenter la production. Alors, les impressions du commissaire étaient assez positives et il avait des incohérences pour ça entre les obligations du AstraZeneca dans les contrats et aussi ce qu'on a constaté sur place dans Alex. Concernant les efforts que la Commission fait au nom du commissaire Breton et aussi le Task Force, c'est le contact d'abord avec les États membres pour bien identifier quels sont les sites de production et quels sont aussi les moyens qu'on peut encore déployer pour augmenter la production. Aussi, le Task Force et le commissaire sont en contact régulier, même journalier, avec les compagnies avec lesquelles on a signé les contrats, mais aussi avec des sous-contractants et d'autres compagnies qui sont des livreurs des matières premières et aussi d'autres équipements qui sont nécessaires pour la production des vaccins. Le Task Force lui-même, il aide aux entreprises, par exemple, de recevoir plus vite des ordres qui ont fait des commandes, par exemple s'il y a des retards. Il a aussi un soutien par rapport à la synchronisation. Par exemple, si il y a des producteurs de syringes, ils doivent bien savoir quand les vaccins vont être livrés un État membre et quand ils vont être administrés, que pour il y a une synchronisation entre la production, la livraison des syringes et aussi l'administration des vaccins. Ce que j'aimerais bien aussi souligner, c'est très important, sont des événements de mise en relation entre les compagnies. Le Task Force va organiser 2 événements la semaine prochaine entre des compagnies, premièrement entre les compagnies qui produisent et entre les livrants, pour bien faire en sorte que les contacts sont faits pour assurer aussi que toutes les offres et les demandes sont satisfaites.
Merci beaucoup, Sonia.
Merci beaucoup.
En ce qui concerne la Bastille, tu sais peut-être, David, qu'au moment où les révolutionnaires ont pris la Bastille, il n'y avait en fait que très très peu de prisonniers à l'intérieur de la forteresse. C'est la seule similitude avec le Berlaymont. Nous sommes aussi très peu nombreux à l'heure actuelle à travailler ici. La plupart de nos collègues sont en télétravail. Maintenant, si tu veux venir nous libérer, nous t'attendons. Alors, nous continuons. Je passe la parole à Caroline.
Pardon, c'est Julien en fait.
Eh bien, écoute, nous ferons avec Julien.
C'est Julien. Voilà. Je voulais revenir sur le mécanisme d'exportation. Ce mécanisme, il est en place depuis 2 mois. Vous haussez le ton depuis la semaine dernière, mais pourquoi ne pas avoir haussé le ton plus tôt et pourquoi ne pas avoir bloqué plutôt des exportations? Est-ce que du coup c'est un nouvel effet d'annonce ou est-ce qu'il faut vraiment s'attendre à des exportations dans les jours qui viennent?
Je ne suis pas sûr de comprendre ta question. Il faut s'attendre à des exportations dans les jours qui viennent. Excuse-moi, est-ce que tu peux préciser?
Ce mécanisme de blocage des exportations, il est en place depuis fin janvier. Il y a eu pour l'instant qu'une seule fois il a été utilisé. Là, vous haussez le ton depuis la semaine dernière. Mais est-ce que c'est juste un effet d'annonce ou est-ce qu'il faut s'attendre à des blocages d'exportation en plus grand nombre dans les jours qui viennent? Est-ce que ce mécanisme va être utilisé en plus grand nombre dans les jours qui viennent?
D'accord. Le mécanisme avait un premier objectif, tu t'en souviendras peut-être, qui était d'assurer la transparence. Car avant que le mécanisme ne soit en place, nous n'avions pas de vision claire des exportations qui quittaient le sol européen. Et donc, avant que nous puissions avoir une vision suffisamment précise et suffisamment large, il fallait évidemment qu'il se passe un certain temps. On ne pouvait pas tirer des conséquences au bout d'une semaine, puisque cela dépendait du rythme auquel les entreprises faisaient des demandes d'exportation. Et la présidente est descendue en salle de presse à partir du moment où nous avons eu la certitude d'avoir une vision d'ensemble suffisamment large et précise pour comprendre qu'il fallait que nous rétablissions un meilleur équilibre entre les livraisons de doses à l'Union européenne et les livraisons de doses à des pays tiers. Quant à des décisions à venir, elles dépendent des demandes qui seront faites par les entreprises. Donc nous ne pouvons pas spéculer en amont sur le nombre et la nature des décisions qui pourraient être prises dans les jours et les semaines à venir. Cela dépendra des entreprises et d'éventuelles demandes qu'elles pourraient être amenées à nous faire et de l'analyse que nous ferons à ce moment-là sur la manière dont elles respectent leurs engagements par rapport à l'Union européenne. Follow-up, Caroline.
Oui, non, mais ce que je ne comprends pas, c'est que ça fait quand même des semaines que vous dites que AstraZeneca ne respecte pas ses engagements en termes de contrat. Donc pourquoi attendre la semaine dernière pour hausser le ton?
C'est toi qui dis que nous avons entendu la semaine dernière. Nous avons dit de manière extrêmement claire, ici en salle de presse et par d'autres canaux, que nous étions en train d'insister auprès de l'entreprise pour qu'elle respecte ses engagements. Et tu te souviendras que la présidente a même nommé Thierry Breton en charge de ce dossier afin qu'il puisse mener les discussions nécessaires avec les entreprises. Mais cela ne concerne pas simplement une seule entreprise, cela concerne l'équilibre global entre les exportations et les livraisons de doses au sein de l'Union européenne. Encore une fois, le but, ce n'est pas de bloquer des exportations pour bloquer des exportations. Le but, c'est de s'assurer que les entreprises livrent ce qui est prévu dans nos contrats. Et nous utilisons pour ce faire différents moyens, dont le règlement sur les autorisations aux exportations. James.
Thanks very much, Eric, for giving me the question. James Frainie from the Daily Mail. Why not just look for alternative suppliers to make up the shortfall with AstraZeneca? I mean, the amount of doses that are sitting around in France and Germany in particular, and the opinion polls that were cited by my colleague earlier, suggests that no one wants it anyway on this side of the channel. So, you know, what's the point of all this?
Thank you, James. You seem to confuse France and Germany and the European Union. Let me remind you, we have 27 member states, and AstraZeneca is being deployed straight across the European Union and is therefore an extremely important vaccine. This is something that we have always said and that we continue to say. So let's not kid ourselves. It's not because you have opinion polls in a certain number of countries that this means that AstraZeneca is not an extremely important vaccine when it comes to the rollout. Now, in terms of other suppliers, we have not bet on a single producer. Right from the outset, we've said that we would be working based on a portfolio of vaccines and producers. As you know, we're still actually in discussion with 2 other vaccine manufacturers. So certainly we have not put all our eggs in one basket. But that said, we have signed a contract with all these companies, and we therefore expect them to deliver. James, a follow-up.
So could that basket include the Russian Sputnik vaccine? If I'm not mistaken, Thierry Breton said yesterday on French television that that won't be part of your strategy. Was he speaking for himself or for the European Commission? Thanks.
James, you know full well what our position is on Sputnik 5. We have said that there is a difference between a vaccine being authorized for use on the European market and the fact that we would include it in the portfolio of vaccines that we negotiate at European level. The Commission and the Member States have not decided to launch negotiations with Sputnik, or rather with the Gamaleya Institute that produces the Sputnik vaccine. Now, the door is not closed forever. It all depends on circumstances. As I've said here as well, it is something that can be reviewed, but we have signed contracts for for some 2.6 billion doses of vaccines. The question is getting them now. That's the point. Q2 in particular is important, as the President said when she came down to the press room. And that has to be based on the portfolio of vaccines that we have built to date. Oliver.
Hello. The Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, amongst others, report that there seem to be problems with the Sinopharm vaccine, the Chinese, one of the two Chinese vaccines. Several people in the United Arab Emirates who received this apparently needed a third dose because they didn't show a sufficient immune reaction. And there are also reports coming out of China, in spite of the strict, information control by the Chinese authorities, that actually in a certain amount of cases this vaccine doesn't lead to immunization. So my question is the European Commission in general following the situation with Sinopharm around the world and also in Europe, because amongst others the Hungarian Prime Minister received this vaccine? And secondly, can you give us an update on, I know you're not the EMA, but still whether the Sinopharm producers have already in the meantime applied with EMA for a rolling review or any other sort of procedure? Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. I give the floor to Stefan.
Thank you very much, Oliver. I think you said at the end of your question what the reply is to your questions. You will have to contact the EMA. EMA is, of course, in charge of assessing the quality and effectiveness, as I said before, of the vaccine. So if you would like to know whether Sinopharm is in contact with EMA in this context, I would indeed invite you to do so. The same with regard to any medical issues that may arise regarding this vaccine. Again, this is something to be followed by the medical people, by the scientific people, and so I would advise you to also contact EMA on this topic as well. Thank you.
Oliver, follow up.
Yes, thank you for this, but my question isn't only sort of a medical authorization related one, it's a political one as well. Does the European Commission, as a self-declared geopolitical commission, follow the story of Sinopharm, which is used in many, many countries where the EU is actually competing politically, diplomatically with the Chinese regime? Do you follow this? Do you have an opinion on the Sinopharm vaccine, especially given that apparently there's an issue with its efficacy? Thank you.
We don't have an opinion on the Sinovac vaccine. Sorry, it's something for EMA to have an opinion on. We follow many things, of course, but we are primarily focused, as you know, at the moment, on ensuring the delivery of vaccines according to our vaccine strategy. Samuel.
Oui, bonjour à tous. Une question concernant les nouvelles données en provenance des États-Unis qui indiquent que le vaccin AstraZeneca est efficace dans tous les groupes d'âge et offre une protection de 100% contre les formes graves et l'hospitalisation. Est-ce que ces données rassurent la Commission sur le fait que le vaccin peut désormais être utilisé en toute sécurité? Et ces données répondent-elles aux craintes qu'on avait précédemment qu'ils ne puissent pas être utilisés au sein des populations les plus âgées? Merci.
Merci Samuel. Stéphane.
Merci beaucoup. Ce qui nous rassure, c'est l'évaluation de nos collègues de l'EMA. Ce sont des scientifiques spécialisés dans justement l'évaluation de vaccins qui ont fait un travail, qui continuent à faire un travail très important pour nous assurer. Ils viennent, comme tu le sais Samuel, de donner leur opinion concernant l'utilisation du vaccin AstraZeneca et nous continuons à suivre évidemment l'approche scientifique et les opinions scientifiques de l'EMA qui est en contact, si je comprends bien, avec d'autres pays aussi pour assurer un suivi de ce vaccin, mais pour ce point-là, je pense que l'EMA est mieux placé pour expliquer ça. Merci.
Bruno. Bruno, you have the floor. We don't manage to give you the floor for some reason. So whilst we try to sort out that problem, we will go to Susanna.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. So I have a few follow-up questions, if I may, following David's question. Are these 360 million doses that Europe is expecting in the second quarter enough to vaccinate 70% of the adult population with two doses, or are you only thinking about one dose? And also on the export transparency mechanism, these 10 million doses that have been exported to the UK, can we assume that they are only they are not from AstraZeneca, since Miriam just said that AstraZeneca is exporting only small amounts? And still, if I may, should we expect any kind of new proposal on Wednesday before the European Council regarding all that can be done to improve vaccine deliveries? Thank you.
Thank you. On your last question, well, you know that Hebdo takes place on Monday afternoons when the college is on Wednesday, so I will be making the announcement as to the college agenda tomorrow at midday. On your other question, I will pass the floor first to Stefan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this question. I think the President has given some very interesting figures some time ago, as you know, referring to the fact that we expect 100 million deliveries of vaccines by the end of this quarter, and then another important amount of doses, around 300 million doses of vaccines for the second quarter, of which 55 million doses are expected to come Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson, as you know, produces vaccines that can be given in one shot, so 55 million doses means that 55 million people can be vaccinated. If you look at the other numbers of those that we expect to be delivered in both Q1 and Q2, you'll see that we are indeed on a very good track to achieve the 70% vaccination target that we have set ourselves to be reached by the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Bruno's connection working? Okay, we go back to Bruno. Sorry, Susanna has a follow-up.
Sorry, Stefan, but you didn't reply to my question. My question is, doing the math, like 360 plus 100, so 470 million doses, even if 55 million out of it are from Johnson & Johnson, is this enough to vaccinate 70% of adult population? And do you have this figure for how many people are we talking about when we talk about 70% of adult population? And you didn't answer to my question regarding the export transparency mechanism.
Susanna, we have so much respect for you that we assume that you know what the number is for 70% of the adult population in the European Union. I don't have that figure off the top of my head. I should. Actually, but unless Stefan has it, we will come back to you, unless I find it in my notes. I just don't want to make a mistake here on the podium. Stefan, do you have the figure?
Thank you. I believe it's around 250, 260 million people, if I'm not mistaken, which we believe should be reached on the basis of the numbers of doses that have been referred to. Again, you have to look at the doses that require, or the vaccines that require 2 doses. So you take the total of these doses, you divide them by 2, and then you know how many people you can vaccinate, and then you add to those the 55 million doses that Johnson & Johnson is expected to deliver in the second quarter. I don't have the latest calculation here with me, but you will see that if you make this calculation, we're definitely on track to achieve our targets. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. We continue on the issue of vaccines. Nicolas.
Oui, bonjour. Je voulais revenir sur la capacité d'immunité collective, si vous permettez. Quand on parle de 70% de la population, c'est bien de la population à partir de 18 ans. Et donc, je voulais savoir si c'était le cas, quel était le pourcentage sur la population totale. Et par ailleurs, je me demande si vous engagez votre responsabilité politique sur ce chiffre de 70%. C'était d'une façon ou d'une autre, parce que c'est un objectif très concret. Donc si vous ne le tenez pas, quelles sont les mesures, je dirais, que vous envisagez à votre niveau si vous n'arriviez pas à tenir cet objectif? Merci.
Merci Nicolas. Tu nous demandes de faire une règle de 3 en ce qui concerne la population de plus de 18 ans, ce qu'elle représente sur la population totale européenne. On pourra le faire. Mais ce qui est clair, c'est que notre objectif de 70% concerne effectivement, comme tu le dis dans ta question, les plus de 18 ans. Je ne pense pas que nous parlions d'immunité collective, mais je passe la parole à Stéphane sur ce point.
Merci beaucoup. Oui, en effet, notre target, notre objectif de 70% est un objectif qui est nécessaire, et on parle en effet, comme Eric l'a dit, de 70% de la population adulte, mais c'est un objectif qui est nécessaire pour nous mettre sur le chemin, en effet, d'atteindre une immunité collective qui permettra les citoyens européens à être évidemment beaucoup mieux protégés contre le virus. Merci.
Merci. Tommaso. Ah, excuse-moi. Non?
Oui, voilà, c'était tout. J'attendais le rouge. Oui, sur la deuxième partie de la question, concrètement, vous ciblez 70%, vous promettez, c'est une promesse faite à la population européenne, qu'est-ce que la Commission européenne, je dirais, s'engage à faire si elle n'atteint pas cet objectif? Parce que c'est une promesse concrète. Et j'ai une petite remarque, je m'étonne, si tu veux... Jusqu'à présent, vous aviez comme stratégie de dire, nous, la Commission, nous ne sommes pas compétents en matière de santé publique. Et là, la vaccination, c'est plus de l'industrie, c'est de la santé publique pure. Le pourcentage de vaccination, c'est la santé publique pure. Donc, ça veut dire que dorénavant, vous avez une compétence pour examiner les taux de vaccination dans les pays membres et pouvoir nous faire des réponses sur ce sujet-là?
Nicolas, tu sais très bien que d'abord, nous n'avons pas fait de promesses. Nous avons fixé un objectif. Et cet objectif, c'est d'être en mesure de livrer des doses qui permettent aux États membres qui sont en charge de la stratégie de vaccination de vacciner 70% de la population adulte dans l'Union européenne. Donc il y a quand même une nuance là qu'il est effectivement important de rappeler. Nous n'avons pas nous-mêmes de compétences dans le domaine de la vaccination et nous avons toujours dit très clairement ici en salle de presse qu'il fallait faire la part des choses entre les responsabilités de la Commission et les responsabilités des États membres. Mais cela dit, nous sommes bien entendu tous engagés ensemble dans cet effort. Il est absolument clair que pour que les États membres puissent atteindre cet objectif qui, je te le rappelle, a été discuté et approuvé par les États membres lors des derniers conseils européens, il faut que l'Union européenne soit en mesure de faire livrer le nombre de doses nécessaires. Donc non, nous n'avons pas l'intention de répondre à toutes les questions dans le domaine de la santé, et je pense que tu le sais très très bien, mais tu sais aussi très bien que nous nous sommes saisis avec les États membres de la question de l'achat, des préachats de vaccins, car il était évident que le virus, lui, circulait dans l'ensemble de l'Union européenne, et que si nous voulions qu'il y ait une réponse cohérente à la diffusion de ce virus et que l'Union européenne puisse s'en sortir ensemble, il était essentiel que l'on travaille ensemble sur les achats de vaccins. Et c'est ce que nous avons fait. Okay, we now move to Alex.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Alex.
Yes, go ahead, Alex. Okay, thank you so much for the question. I'm just calling because, I had a question about, because the Dutch government is sort of saying that, who are on the front line when it comes to the factory, the AstraZeneca factory in the Netherlands, are saying that they're hoping for some sort of negotiated, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I mean, they're hoping for some sort of negotiated solution involving AstraZeneca, obviously, but also the Commission and the British government. Because it's such a big deal to all the parties involved, I just wonder, I'm a bit surprised to not be hearing that maybe there's talks going on between the Commission and British authorities in order to sort of approach AstraZeneca maybe in some kind of joint way to find a solution to this, since we all know that they overpromised to everyone involved in the story. So I was just wondering, is there any kind of dialogue that's beginning between the Commission and our old friends in the British government? And sort of a second part to that, I was just wondering if you could be a little bit more precise about how the summit later in the week plays into this narrative as well. What are we looking from the leaders in terms of dealing with Britain and dealing with AstraZeneca in this fight? And because it seems like the Commission has all, for once, the Commission has all the cards, and they don't really need to go to the leaders in a way. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you very much, Alex. Look, of course, we are in discussions with the United Kingdom. It's obvious that when you have this sort of situation, contacts will take place, and this we have already said. So yes, we are in discussion with the different parties in order to find solutions. Secondly, on your question related to the European Council, obviously, as I said in my answer before, the Commission and the Member States are in this together. It is only as a team that we can find a long-lasting, sustainable answer to the pandemic. And therefore, it is only natural that the Commission and the Member States not only exchange information on what they are doing based on their different prerogatives, but also agree on the way forward. To give you an example, it would not have been possible for us to move forward on the strategy to acquire vaccines without a clear mandate from the Member States. And therefore, since then, the Member States have been meeting, the leaders have been meeting in the European Council format on a very regular basis in order to discuss the developments. And for the Commission, it is extremely important that we continue to have these regular discussions and continue to enjoy the full backing of Member States when it comes to the different steps we have to take in order to ensure the proper rollout of vaccines and vaccination strategies. Okay, Bruno, we're going to give it one last try.
Hello. Got me. Brilliant. I just wondered, Eric, if you could tell us a little bit more about these contacts that are ongoing at the moment. What sort of level they're at, whether progress being made. We also sort of understand that part of the discussion about Helix in the Netherlands is stocks that the factory has of the active ingredient, the drug substance, And although production there has been difficult, we understand there's something like enough active ingredients for between 5 million to 10 million doses. Are those kinds of figures correct? We also understand that AstraZeneca have got 10 British engineers there. They're really trying to get the plant up and running in full production. If the UK and the EU work together to get this plant in full production, would that assuage your or the EU's questions over the AstraZeneca contract? And just something you said earlier on, you said reciprocality was about countries that export vaccines and the materials used to make vaccines. Of course, the UK does export those materials, and factories in Yorkshire, I believe, are a very important part of the Pfizer supply chain. So does that mean in that regard you're happy with reciprocality? Thank you.
God, now I really doubt I've said reciprocity for so long that I hear you as well as James before saying reciprocality, and I'm glad to be corrected, and I will certainly go and have a look. Look, no, I'm not going to provide you on details of the discussions. Obviously, it is clear that we are in discussions with the UK authorities, and as ever, the European Commission is open and constructive in trying to find solutions. We have made clear statements as to what we expect from AstraZeneca, but the President has said in recent interviews that obviously we're open for discussions with the different partners, and this is obviously the case for the United Kingdom. And I'm certainly not going to go into details as to what might be possible solutions. The solution is that AstraZeneca delivers doses to the European Union as per our contract. As to reciprocality, I said indeed a bit before during the midday briefing that for us this has to be understood in the wide sense, right? This is not about I give you one dose, you give me one dose. That would be a bit absurd. It would not make any sense. It's about the whole process of producing vaccines and how we can ensure that supply chains operate as efficiently and effectively as possible in this very difficult time. Tommaso.
Yes, hi, thank you for the floor. Tommaso Lecca, AG News Agency. Eric, you said a few minutes ago that the Commission sent a letter of formal notice to AstraZeneca to start the dispute settlement mechanism. Would you tell us how this mechanism works? Who is going to decide what AstraZeneca will have to do to respect the contract signed with the EU? And are you able to exclude that the activation of this mechanism will not push AstraZeneca to block all the remaining doses allocated to the EU countries until a decision is taken? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me give the floor to Stefan.
Thank you very much, Tommaso. I think that the mechanism of the dispute resolution has been explained a little bit already last week, so I will repeat what I've said there. It's a mechanism which is allowed by the contract and which allows one of the parties to write a letter, an official letter to another party, inviting the other party to sit together and to try to come to an agreement regarding the open issues. These discussions then take place between executive officers of both parties, in this case of the Commission and of the company, and the idea is indeed to come to an arrangement, understanding, an agreement on the open issues, a procedure which I said is laid down and explained also in the contract. Thank you. The contract, sorry, between the Commission and the company, of course, the advance purchase agreement.
Tommaso, you have a follow-up.
Yes, thank you. And just to understand, in the case you don't find an agreement, what will happen? Will you end up before a judge? And if yes, which judge are we talking about? The Belgian court, I suppose. Thank you.
Stefan.
We're not entering into speculation here. We are in the dispute resolution phase, and this is what we're focused on. The idea is to come to an understanding, to an agreement, and then without entering into any further speculation. As to competent courts, I think you will see the clauses there in the contract, but we are now in the phase of the dispute resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions on vaccines per se, and so we go back to Griselda and her question on the difference between freedom of movement within a country and freedom of movement between countries. Griselda, merci beaucoup pour ta patience.
Merci Eric. Alors Griselda, premier mot, laisse-moi dire que je ne vais pas faire de commentaires sur la décision spécifique de l'Espagne. Ça c'est plutôt une question pour les autorités espagnoles, mais je peux te donner un peu le cadre général du contexte de cette question. Alors, je vais faire 2 points. Un, il faut distinguer d'une part la libre circulation entre les États membres, qui est une compétence clairement de l'Union européenne, et d'autre part les mesures contre le virus à l'intérieur d'un État membre, ce qui est une compétence nationale. Le deuxième point, néanmoins, la recommandation est importante dans ce contexte, la recommandation que nous avons adoptée l'octobre dernier et récemment mise à jour. La recommandation dit clairement que, vu que la transmission et le risque de la transmission est similaire pour les voyages domestiques et les voyages transfrontaliers, les États membres devraient assurer la cohérence entre les mesures appliquées aux 2 types de voyages. Alors, l'approche de la recommandation est de prendre compte de la situation régionale plutôt que la situation nationale. Pour le dire simplement, les frontières ne pointent pas au virus.
Merci beaucoup, Christiane. Y a-t-il d'autres questions pour Christiane? Je n'en vois pas. Y a-t-il d'autres questions pour nous aujourd'hui? Griselda, tu as une question de suivi.
Mais puisque Christiane est là, aujourd'hui l'Espagne a reçu une lettre du Conseil de l'Europe en demandant de changer sa législation pour garantir les droits fondamentaux, spécialement après la décision de mettre en prison ces chanteurs de rap, M. Pablo Hasél. J'aimerais savoir si la Commission désirerait que l'Espagne suive les recommandations du Conseil de l'Europe. Merci beaucoup.
Alors, Griselda, je ne suis pas au courant de cette lettre, mais je peux seulement répéter ce que nous avons dit déjà, que nous sommes, alors nous connaissons, suivant cette situation, nous avons vu les protestes et garantir la liberté d'expression est nécessaire dans toutes les sociétés démocratiques. Et nous sommes aussi au courant qu'il y a quelques plans de changer le cadre législatif, mais concernant ce cas spécifique, nous n'avons pas de commentaires. C'est une question finalement pour comme tu sais, comme j'ai déjà dit sur ce podium, une question pour les autorités nationales.
Merci beaucoup. Voilà, cela nous amène à la fin de notre midday briefing qui a été particulièrement long aujourd'hui de nouveau. Merci et nous vous retrouverons avec plaisir demain à midi.